So Tantra is all about having amazing sex, right? Or using your sexual energy to manifest amazing miracles in your life? Or it allows you to have 10,000 orgasms in an evening? Well, yes and no. That sort of Tantra that you're thinking about is technically Neo Tantra. What I'm here to talk about today is real Tantra. The Tantra that has been practiced for 1,500 years at this point. Yes, it does involve sex, and yes, it does involve a lot of wonderful orgasmic states, but that is just a small piece of the puzzle. So if you're curious to learn more, watch on. So hey, I'm Kay, nice to meet you. So who am I to be talking about Tantra? What experience do I have with it? Well, I'm glad you asked. I actually lived in an ashram for 7 years studying Tantric Yoga, and I have been practicing it for probably about 16, 17 years at this point, every single day, multiple times a day. So let's get down to it. What is Tantra then? Since I told you what it is not, what is it? Tantra is a spiritual tradition that emerged around 500 or 600 AD to help people find enlightenment, find a connection with the oneness, to achieve their best lives, their best selves, and spiritual liberation. To understand where it came from and why, we need to understand a little bit of Hindu cosmology. So according to the ancient rishis, or seers, the universe has spun between different epochs. Epochs where everybody is happy and enlightened and living in this magical state where you gallop alongside little fawn in the forest and the rabbits bring you carrots to eat and the weather's beautiful and everyone's enlightened and everyone's got money and food and everything's wonderful. The Golden Age. And it goes all the way down 4 steps into what they call the Kali Yuga. The Kali Yuga is defined as a time where less than a quarter of the population is interested in spiritual things. Murder, rape, pillaging, violence, stealing, lying is very, very commonplace, and it is a very, very dark time of the soul. Now, according to these ancient philosophers, around the time that Rome was about to fall, we switched from the Bronze Age, the step 1 above the bottom, down to the Kali Yuga. Some call it the Lead Age. So we've got the Gold Age up at the top where everything's beautiful. We've got the Silver Age where it's still 3/4 beautiful, it's still really nice, things are working pretty well. Down to the Bronze Age where it's about half, things aren't so good. And then down into the Kali Yuga, the Lead Age, where only a quarter of the civilization is interested in these elevated spiritual things. So coinciding with what we in the Western world tend to call the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, where life got really rough, right? Life expectancy went down to about 35 years. People lost their teeth, there was no hygiene, there was very little access to education or wealth or food even. It was a really, really difficult time to live, despite what fantasy books say, because if you're anything like me and love a good fantasy book, the Middle Ages sound like a lot of fun. Not so much. It was a really difficult time in human history. And to combat that difficulty, that harshness, a really strong new style of practice had to come through, because when things get that hard, you need to get something that's going to cut through the difficulty, cut through the noise, cut through the general heaviness and malaise of the time. Enter Tantra. So Tantra grew out of the Vedic tradition of India, a tradition that some have estimated is 6, 7, 8,000 years old. There's some really beautiful research about stories, about places and happenings that geologically could have only happened 6, 7,000 years in the past. Interestingly enough, along with this idea of yugas, these eras, we are only aware of levels that are at our frequency or below it. So if there was a previous Golden Age or Silver Age and we aren't at that level yet, they'll be a mystery to us. So perhaps there were civilizations, as places like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa suggest, where they had indoor plumbing and public works and grid-designed streets, that perhaps there were these burgeoning civilizations thousands of years ago that we don't think existed, that we think it all started with ancient Greece and Mesopotamia, but maybe there were these really sophisticated civilizations, like people talk about Atlantis, they talk about other mythical cities. Maybe they really existed. So moving into these darker ages, the traditional practices of like chanting and making offerings just weren't cutting it. They weren't doing the same good anymore. We needed something that could manage the difficulty of the time. So what Tantra does is this. It says, instead of rejecting the world and trying to just align yourself with what is pure, let's instead embrace everything life gives you. Let's embrace the chaos, embrace the difficulty, and embrace the panic and the loss and the famine and the lust and all of those things that make life difficult. And let's use that for our spiritual enlightenment. So this is where we start to see a separation between what are called sutric paths and tantric paths. Sutric paths are more of a path of like a monk or a nun, a renunciate, where you say, okay, I'm going to give up meat, I'm going to give up sex, I'm going to take vows of poverty, celibacy, vegetarianism, I'm going to give up regular human interactions, I'm going to move into a monastery and devote my life to prayer. And that path says, I'm going to give up, I'm going to give up, I'm going to give up until there's nothing left but the soul, until there's nothing left but I consciousness. And that's a beautiful way to practice. And if you are called to a sutric renunciate tradition, more power to you. Mazel tov, blessings, I wish you well. Being an American in this contemporary world, I, however, don't find that possible. I at one point considered taking vows of celibacy and becoming a swami. I had a friend from high school who became a Christian monk and left. Frankly, most everyone I've known or heard stories about who have taken those vows have at some point given them up. Because especially in the contemporary world, and particularly as an American, we live in a consumerist culture, we live in a capitalistic culture. It's very hard to live in that way. In other societies, it's possible to take those vows and your neighbors would feed you and clothe you and give you a place to sleep and take care of you. But good luck doing that on the streets of DC or Chicago or New York. Not really gonna happen. Probably doesn't even happen in small towns either. We live in a world that says experiencing life has value. Don't run away from it. And that is exactly the message that Tantra projects, which is say, don't reject your sexual life. Don't reject your family life. Don't reject your career. Live those things, but realize that they are just part of the game. They are not the end in of themselves. They are just part of a bigger picture, a bigger journey. And here's where I think it's important to differentiate again traditional Tantra versus the Neo Tantra movement. Because the Neo Tantra movement says, just pay attention to the pleasure. Have as much wonderful sex as you want, try to live in an orgasmic state, have these wonderful sexual experiences with your partners, and enjoy it. Well, that's lovely, but that actually started in the 1800s with people like Aleister Crowley and the Golden Dawn, who got exposed to Indian practices and took some of them and started to mix them with Western occultism to create what they called sexual mysticism. Now, yes, ancient tantric traditions did have very strong and very key sexual practices that were part of their development. But when you divorce those things and make that the central tenets of your ideology, that's where things start to go a little bit awry. Because a true tantric practice should always encompass two ideas. One, how are you getting enlightened? How is this helping you manifest your highest self, your best state? Two, how is this helping you enjoy life more? If you only have one or the other, it's not Tantra. If you have only enlightenment, then that's probably more of a renunciate tradition. If you have only seeking pleasure and benefit in life, then that is probably more of a Neo Tantra, magical spirituality sort of manifesting sort of spiritual tradition. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're looking for true Tantra, that is not what you're looking for. So let's get to the good stuff. You came here because you're kind of curious about how can Tantra make my life better, and can it, yes, teach me how to have amazing orgasms? Absolutely it can. But just keep in mind, if it's only for pleasure and gratification, that's more of a Kama Sutra thing, which is totally different. If you're using that energy to become more enlightened, to help yourself heal and grow and help your sexual partners and spiritual partners heal and grow, then that's real Tantra. So one of the keys to having a very robust spiritual tantric practice is having strong awareness of your energetic body. So can you right now feel your chakras? Can you feel your energy flowing? Can you feel yourself able to breathe and move energy around? And if the answer is no, totally cool. I have literally dozens of videos on my YouTube channel that can help you start tuning into your spiritual energy and start to figure that stuff out. And if all of that sounds a little too hooey-dooey for you, totally cool, I get that. Don't worry about your energy. Can you just be with yourself? Can you be with your breath? Can you be with your mind? Can you sit in a state of stillness and be at one with your experience of selfhood? That's step one. If you can't do those things, then you're not going to be able to have these amazing sort of esoteric experiences where you feel yourself having sex with deities or able to flow your energy so that you can have multiple orgasms or live in an orgasmic state constantly. Like, that's step one. Step two is to start to get over the shame that you feel about doing things wrong or doing things that are sinful or viewing things in your life as being either good or bad. Because the idea of holy versus unholy, that's bullshit from a tantric perspective. There is no sin, there is no imperfection. Everything is inherently perfect, including suffering, including loss, including disappointment, heartache, pain, all of that is perfect in and of itself. And for us as Westerners, that's a pretty difficult trope to break because we are programmed to always seek what is better, what makes us happier. Like, right? I'm a millennial. Our lives are geared around this idea of learning to be happy, searching for that bliss. I'm not immune to it, but instead we need to start seeing the perfection in everything. Because as soon as you start to judge or separate yourself from something, then it's no longer going to be able to teach you. It's no longer part of your experience. Instead, we need to embrace all of our parts. Because as we start getting into more tantric practices, you have to start doing things that other people would look down upon. So for example, when I do a puja or a set of offerings to the goddess Kali, a tantric goddess, not only am I offering mantras and chanting and visualizations and prayer and invocations and all these traditional sort of forms of worship, but I also have to offer the difficult things in life and stay centered throughout it. So in a traditional tantric puja with Kali, you would kill an animal and stay centered. You would have 5 or 6 glasses of alcohol and stay centered. You would consume hallucinogenics or pot and stay centered. You'd have sex, ritualistic sex, and stay centered. That's the goal of tantric life, right? It's not to renounce everything that is not holy. It's to embrace it all and say, hell yeah, I'm gonna live, I'm gonna fuck, I'm going to dance, I'm going to celebrate, I'm gonna eat, I'm gonna do all these things, and I'm gonna grow from it. I'm gonna stay connected with my spiritual essence, I'm going to stay centered, and I'm going to evolve through that process. It also just doesn't give you a free pass to then say, oh, I can just do anything and it's spiritual. Not entirely, it's all about perspective, right? Like if you go to a 50-person orgy and just, are blasted out of your mind and it's all a blur, that's not a tantric practice, that's just you getting wasted and it all being a blur. If you were to go to a 50-person orgy and consciously connect with each person and work with your energy and sort of feel how things were feeling and using that energy to evolve, then that would be more tantric work. And even in more Brahmanical or more traditional Indian and yogic sort of spirituality, they still talk about the 4 aims of life. Artha, wealth, kama, pleasure, moksha, liberation, and dharma, right living. So kama and moksha are present in there. But from the tantric perspective, it goes past this idea of breaking things down into pleasure and non-pleasure. It's about saying that everything is holy, everything is useful, everything is viable. I'm going to embrace life whole, I'm going to eat life whole, I'm going to do everything that's meaningful to me, while still remembering that this is a great game. This is a chance to grow and to liberate myself. I'm not going to take it seriously. I'm not going to get caught up in the illusion, the maya of it all, as some call it, the great illusion of this world. See it as the rasa of lila, the great game. In more heterodox or more traditional yogic practices, they talk about the 4 levels of consciousness: deep sleep, dreaming, active awareness, and then turiya state, turiya being the state of samadhi, a state of enlightenment. Tantric yogis say, yes, it is that, but turiya is also the state of orgasm. That those few seconds, because it's only for most people a few seconds long, those few seconds that you experience orgasm, you are connected to that oneness, that transversal, beautiful, loving, lush, beautiful state. And, there's a feeling of connection with the people around you. There's a sense of inner peace and outer peace and relaxation. That orgasming and enlightenment are actually the same thing. And that you can experience enlightenment through orgasming, and you can also experience orgasmic energy through enlightenment. So yes, in traditional tantric practices, you do have ritualized sex, ritualized self-pleasuring, sex with deities. Like, you do have very intense sexual practices, and you also work to grow your sexual energy, to feel it fill you, to feel it expand around you, to dwell in that state. And I'll say for myself, there have been plenty of days where I have spent 13, 14 hours just walking about my life, having like one long rolling orgasm. There's numerous times I've been like walking my dog with just a hard on in my pants the whole time because it's just like overflowing throughout me. And that's a really fucking cool place to be. And not that I always choose to be in that state or want to be in that state, right? Like, we have different energy centers in our body, and the joy that you feel in orgasm is comparable and akin to the same experiences you can have through your heart energy, through your third eye, through your crown, through your base, right? Like that, it's just a different flavor of ice cream, I like to sometimes call it. So there's some days where, yeah, I'm really in my sexual energy. There's some days where I'm really in my heart. And that's beautiful too, and that still is Tantra. Okay, so you say, great Kay, I've done those first 2 steps. I've learned to focus on my energy and connect with it. I've learned to see everything in life as holy and beautiful. I am ready to go into tantric work. Great, I'm so glad to hear that. What are the next steps? Well, there's lots of meditation practices and self-pleasuring practices and other type of practices that you can do, but the best thing to do is actually work with somebody who has been doing this kind of work and work with them one-on-one. Because when someone initiates you into tantric work, and I use that word specifically, initiation, there's a transference of energy. So their accumulated experiences and experiences of their lineage, the people that they learned from, can be then transferred to you to help you grow. If you just read about a practice in a book or in a YouTube video, you may have some experiences, they might be very powerful, but they may not be as powerful as working one-on-one with someone. So I'm going to say yes, by all means, go through my YouTube channel, read through the stuff I've written, check out my book, Journey to the Ecstatic Self. There's lots of great information in there, but if you really want to take this to the next level, I recommend finding someone to work with you one-on-one, whether that be me or somebody else that you feel called to. And whomever you work with, it's really important that you vet them well. This is not something to be undertaken lightly. You want to work with somebody who you feel very comfortable with, somebody who you feel really has the goods, something of value to offer, that's not just something that they know theoretically, and that it's somebody who you really feel called to connect with, because this isn't just a journey that happens for a few weeks. It doesn't just happen for a few years. Some say it happens from lifetime to lifetime, that once you commit to this journey, you will continue on it until you reach the oneness, until you reach either liberation, option A, or option B, which is vows of bodhisattva, a vow to reincarnate again and again to help all sentient beings achieve enlightenment until everyone returns back to the oneness. Lady's choice. But if you just want a simple, mindful, sexual, spiritual practice that you can do on your own, something to help you and get your foot kind of through that door and see what that experience is like, a really kind of basic but profound thing to do is go heat up oil, like coconut oil, sesame oil, get it nice and warm, and then give yourself a very slow and thoughtful massage. And while you do that, try to be present to every sensation. Be present to every part of your body as you touch it. Tell yourself that you're grateful for this experience, that you're grateful for your body, and that you want to learn from it. Because we are not our body, we are not our minds, we are something so much more than that. The great yogis call that deeper inner state Sat Chit Ananda, truth, consciousness, and bliss. That is what resides within us. Pure objective truth, brilliant awareness, and indescribable orgasmic bliss. So that's my charge for you today. If you want to start getting into more of a tantric practice, start developing a healthy relationship with your body, with your mind, start settling in, start to become just more aware of the experience of self-touch, self-pleasure, and see where that leads you. And if you want to check out other practices on my YouTube channel, I share lots of mantras, lots of visualizations, lots of sexual energy work. There's a lot more you can dive into here. And of course, know that I'm here to work with you one-on-one if that's ever something that you so choose. My website, ecstaticself.com, has some great resources, as does my book, Journey to the Ecstatic Self, and I like to work in chunks of about 12 weeks with people one-on-one to really give time to settle in and connect with oneself. So if this was helpful for you, please drop a comment in the chat box below. I just love to know how these things resonate. I teach a weekly meditation class each Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern time, so please join me on here on YouTube Live for that. Always open to take questions too, so feel free to join in and type it in the chat box. Thank you for your time. It's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm Kay. This is Ecstatic Self. Namaste.